Did you know that your brain might be hardwired in a way that see people of other races as threats? Deep inside your mind, in the hidden corners of our brain, there are some mechanisms at play. Those who might explain why you feel slight tension when you see someone who is different in the matter of looks than you. Could it be that our brains are wired to be this way, in a way that is in conflict with the values that we hold today? I'm Dr. Parsai, and this is the AMROS lab. Here we uncover the facts about how our thinking and our brain works, even those who might not be comfortable to process at first. But I will try to explain everything biologically to you, so it makes it easier for you to understand, make it simpler, and make them understandable. Scientists found that when they put people in front of people from other races or show them picture of other races, a part of their brain reacts to these faces and is flared up on imaging and is high on activity. This part of the brain is called amygdala and is the brain's center of fear and anxiety. They found that this kind of reactions happened even if those people didn't believe they had a racial bias. In some of these studies, these numbers are as high as 75%. And it's not something new, it's something that has been existed in the literature for several years. First, I need to explain to you what does amygdala do. It's like the brain's alarm system. It works unconsciously. And it evolved in a way that helped our ancestors recognize the sources of danger. Those sources of danger could be rival tribes, could be large animals, could be snakes, could be anything that put their life in danger. So it initiates some sort of mechanisms in the body that makes you ready to react in time. For example, amygdala can initiate the very well-known response of fight or flight. In one famous study in white American participants, the scientists put them in brain scanners. This type of brain scanners called fMRI. fMRIs are functional magnetic resonance imaging. They can see that what part of the brain has the more activity. So when these people were shown people of white or black faces, in most of the time when they were seeing a black face, the center of fear and aggression in their brain flashed up. That is called the amygdala. Here's the catch. The amygdala doesn't always distinguish between the real sources of danger or those that we perceive as danger. It is true that our world is much more different than it was like hundreds of thousands of years ago. And we could say that the amygdala sometimes can misfire to the things that are not actually harmful. Are we all biased toward people of other races? Well, that's not true. But it's so hard to understand what happens inside of our mind. What is our true attitude? There are a few people that admit they have a negative feeling toward people of other races. Is there another way that we can see someone has an implicit racial bias? Is there a way other than imaging to see what happens inside of our brain? That is why scientists invented a test that is called implicit association test. This test measures how positive or how negative your feelings are toward a certain race. And here is a surprising finding. In the mentioned study that I told you earlier, scientists found that when a person has higher IAT score or has more negative feeling or attitude toward people of other races, and when they were shown picture of that race, that specific race, they had higher amygdala response, higher reaction, and higher flare-up on the imaging. So it means that their center of fear and anxiety was more active if they had actually a bad feeling about people of other races. But this has a good part. There are some other parts of our brain that evolved in a way that control the reactions that amygdala do. There is a part of our prefrontal cortex called DLPFC. This is dorsolateral part of prefrontal cortex. This is like the brain's adult part. This is like brain's most strict superego. And it works in a way that when amygdala react to things that are not actually threats, the DLPFC reins it in, calming it down, and telling that this is not true, you should not be like that. The so-called DLPFC doesn't fully develop until the late 20 years of our lives. Scientists say that this is because this part of our brain needs to learn the rules of our society, learn how to behave correctly, how to interact with other people without disrespect. What are the rules of society? What are the rules of behavior? And that is why it needs years of experience to work as well as we expect. Interestingly, studies have shown that when you are in a study similar to the one that I said, and you see figures of, for example, black race, but those figures are familiar ones, like famous people like Michael Jordan, the response that appears in the amygdala doesn't exist and doesn't appear. That is because this type of response is more about familiarity, is more about experience, and more about knowing, and is less about skin color. Are there other parts of our brain that have some sort of racial bias? Have you ever heard about the other race effect? Have you ever felt like that the faces of a certain race look all the same to you? This is what other race effect is called, and it is associated with a part of our brain that is called FFA. It is fusiform phase area and is responsible for recognizing the details and distinguishing between the faces of people. The FFA works best with the faces that it's familiar with. So if you're grown up in a society that is almost consisted of only one race, your FFA becomes highly attuned to those. When it comes to distinguishing between the faces of people from other race, it becomes struggling for the FFA of your brain, and the picture of people from other race become less distinct to it. And in the imaging studies of the brain, scientists approved this. They found that when you see the unfamiliar faces from other race, this part of your brain doesn't get activated as strongly. So the main key here for the FFA is exposure and experience. So it is obvious that our brain needs exposure and experience to be able to develop the skill to tell the picture of and the faces of people apart, especially if those people are from races other than the race that we are. I should tell you that your brain and my brain, our brains are developed into a state that is based on old-aged ancient instincts, and those are highly adaptable. The first step to overcome these reactions and these instincts is to recognize them and give credit to them. So by understanding the biases of our mind and knowing how our brain works, we can start taking actions and taking steps to challenge these biases and align our actions with the values of empathy and inclusion. So next time that you meet someone new, ask yourself that, am I seeing them as truly as who they are? Or am I seeing them through the old age, ancient lens of survival mechanisms of human? Thank you for watching this episode. I'm Dr. Parsai, and in this video series, I want to introduce you to biases that your mind have, the way that these biases change the way that your brain works and the way that you think, the way that you relate to people, and the way that you act. Thank you, everybody. If you like this video, like and subscribe so you can see the next time that I release a video in this series, and see you soon.